Well, the motivation first is the fact that I've been in the legislature for, this is my third tenure, and I believe in the Constitution, the legislature is the first arm of government, because everything the government does is executed based on the laws that established those things. Now, if you bring that to bear, it means the law has to be made for the executive to implement, for the judiciary to interpret where there's a conflict between the executive and the legislature. Now, these are three arms of government that are complementary and they work with each other. Now, my motivation was that the legislature has been the least developed of all the arms of government coming from 1960 to date. From 1960 to date, we've had more of military regime than you had the democratic rule. And the legislature is the symbol of democracy, where we all sit down to discuss whatever we want to spend. If we have to appropriate funds, we must determine whether everybody, there's a spread and there's a balance. Now, unfortunately for the legislature, it's least developed because each time the military comes into power, the legislature must be suspended because the Constitution must be suspended. And the moment you suspend the Constitution, the legislature has no place. But you always have a governor who is a military administrator, and the military administrator must work with commissioners. So the executive arm is complete. You have permanent secretaries, or DGs as they are so called. In the judiciary, you will always have the courts and you always have the judges, even when the military is in power. But the legislature, the speaker and everybody is fired. So you can understand why we have the issue. So the legislature remains the least developed arm of government. And because we're least developed, we had issues in understanding the place of the legislature. Even the Nigerian nation does not understand the legislature. They see the legislature as an aberration. That what are this group of guys talking? They don't know what they do. They just sit down, talk, but forgetting that the Constitution rightly places power in their vested or power in them. So my motivation was to restore the glory and the dignity of the legislature as the first arm of government. And how do you restore the dignity, integrity, and the glory of an institution when the infrastructures are not in place? When you also look at that, you need to also understand that you need to strengthen the institution for it to live to its full potentials. And so I thought the first thing first is upgrade the infrastructure. The moment you upgrade the infrastructure and you're going into the legislature, you have a sense of fact that you're walking into a place of authority and you will adjust yourself. If you're walking into the government house, by the look at the policemen at the gate, you know that you're walking into a place of authority, so you need to sit up. If you're walking into a court, you know how to adjust yourself, otherwise, because if you make a noise in a way you ought not to, the judge can sentence you right there, and you go for it. But it's not the same with legislature. Everybody just comes. After all, it's the people's parliament, and so it's the people's court. So, but this, you need to also upgrade the infrastructure. That's largely because the infrastructure appears so. And so today, I now thought this was one thing I was going to ensure that I do: restore the glory, ensure the bureaucracy is working right, and at the same time, ensure that you can put in place a system that will outlive me. It's not about me, it's about the legislature. And so that informed the kind of transformation that you've seen today. And I have wonderful colleagues who, by the time I put my vision before them, were very happy to say, let's hit the road, that they're with me. And of course, I have an understanding governor. The legislature is not autonomous. I'm glad to have a governor who is a full Democrat, who understands completely that the separation of powers, and he gave us full free hand to do what we thought was right. And he's very proud of it. So that's the transformation you've seen. If you ask me if it's been a deterrent, yes, in some ways a deterrent. Because the death penalty, it's a capital punishment, is for members of the House who represent their constituents and Delta as a whole. That is what they believed will curb or stem the tide of kidnapping, because it was a menace. And Deltans generally upheld that opinion, because if you do not kill these hoodlums and you see the very heinous crimes they commit, they will not appreciate the impact of the law. And whether you believe it or not, as a young man, if you told me growing up, let's go into armed robbery, I will not dare it, because I know it's death penalty. That if anything happens and I get caught, even for holding a gun and seeing somewhere, it's death. So I wouldn't go there. But if you told me that, don't worry, come, if we catch your uncle, we'll lock him in a room, be giving him food, but we'll go and tell people that he's lost, they'll bring money for ransom and we'll release him. That sounds more like a sweet deal, and I'll be ready to deal. And that is how a lot of persons got into kidnapping, because they did not see any big deal to the crime. But forgetting that you cannot also do that without going with arms, because you need to put the person in a state of fear. And sometimes, or most times, it went awry and they kill the people. Sometimes they get very horrible, cut their fingers and sent to, these are things that, how would you treat such people who, when dealing with innocent persons that are their victims, they are senseless and they don't even have a mind to say, this is your fellow human being. You want something from him, and yet you deal with him in such a manner. The only thing that fits such a person when caught is death, or when you conspire with such persons, is death. So now if you tell a young man, let's go into the crime of kidnapping, he's also going to consider whether he's ready to die or leave. If he's ready to leave, he will most likely not be part of the parade. But if he's willing to die, he will say, okay, let's go. So, believe it or not, it has served as a deterrent in some quarters, and people are clearly keeping away from it.